But first, let's return to that speech today at the National Press Club from Labor's National Secretary, the campaign boss Paul Erickson, poking the coalition in its soft underbelly of energy, knowing, of course, that this lies at the heart of yesterday's split. Erickson said this.
The coalition needs to accept the lessons from the last two federal elections and their last two defeats if they want to be competitive again. And I think that starts with facing up to the reality of climate change and to the energy transition that the country needs to make.
I tell you what, you never take advice from your opponents. That's not designed to do you well. To discuss that speech, let's bring in the panel, Senior Fellow at the Menzies Research Centre, Nick Cater, and Deputy Executive Director at the IPA, Daniel Wild. Well, a fair bit to go through, but I want to start with those comments you just made there on renewables. I mean, he's lauding renewables as part of their big win. And of course, as I said, he'd say that. This speech is in part about congratulating their base, but also wedging the coalition. As I always say, when you go to write history, the victor holds the pen. And of course, given the coalition split, those comments are designed to drive that wedge home from yesterday even harder. And yet where the Libs, as I said just a moment ago, have fought climate, Nick Cater, as an economic issue, 2010, 2013, even 2019, they have won. Where they have Me Too'd Labor, they have not.
Yeah, but I think the energy policy was decisive in 2019 when we took on their 45% target and showed it was just going to cause economic chaos. Yes, Paul Erickson's right. We do have to learn the lessons from 22 and 25. The lesson from 25 was we ran dead on it, Peter. We just didn't talk about energy. We Me Too'd Labor 100%. By going to zero 2050, which I thought was a mistake at the time. I held my counsel. Now I'm happy to say it was a mistake. And in 2025, well, we had a strong policy, but it was so badly organised. We made huge strategic errors in how we constructed the nuclear policy, or how Liberals constructed the nuclear policy, and then made even bigger strategic errors in how they tried to sell it. And they left hanging this idea the government was going to pay for the lot. I want nuclear, and I hope it's not going to pay for the lot. But, of course, Paul Erickson is a campaigner. He's talking about it from campaigners' point of view. Me talking about it from a policy and an engineering point of view. There is no alternative. No alternative.
And if the coalition, Nick, absents themselves from this debate by Me Too'ing Labor, it sets us up for a trajectory of significant energy and national security and industrial harm. And it consigns households for basically being mendicant survivors on handouts from government just to pay their energy bills. I mean, I think the Liberal Party should pack up and go home if it's not prepared to get into this fight.
Yeah, Peter. But I had a conversation with a Liberal MP who then held his seat, and it doesn't now, it's in Teal hands, and he told me in 2019 after the election, we have to adopt zero 2050 or we're going to lose Wentworth, McKellar, etc., etc. Guess what? We did adopt zero 2050 and we lost all those seats and we could only win one of them back. So it is a disaster. We should face up to the fact that was a mistake. And I think over the next 3 years, the world debate is going to move on very quickly with this, and we're going to look like idiots if we're still clinging to net zero 2050 in 3 years' time.
Dan, no one with a brain believes that if the Libs were just to give the Teals or the left everything that they want, if they absented themselves from the net zero debate, if they rolled over and scratched the renewables only belly, that suddenly the Teals would all just give up their seats and go back to their day jobs and hand them back to the Liberal Party. That's not going to happen. Once you roll over on energy and net zero and nuclear or whatever else it might be, they'll come after you on social policy or on universal incomes, on taxation. I mean, they want to destroy their opponents. This isn't just sort of a chess game for them.
Well, that's right. The adoption by the coalition of net zero and taking that to the 22 election and the 25 election has significantly diminished their credibility in the community. Exactly as Nick outlined, there was a whole bunch of strategic errors when it came to the nuclear policy rollout. But bigger than that, for Erickson to claim that this was somehow a mandate for a greater expansion of renewables is actually inconsistent with the campaign that he ran. Because I can tell you as a candidate on the ground for the Liberal Party, net zero wasn't mentioned once. It was not on any Labor billboards. It was not on any Labor pamphlets or handout material. Chris Bowen was not a feature in the national campaign at all, because Labor knows ultimately net zero is a vote loser, not a vote winner. Survey after survey, including those undertaken by ourselves, shows that Australians want affordability and reliability, not cutting emissions to be the priority of energy policy in this country. So if net zero was such a big vote winner, why didn't Labor run on that policy and put it at the top of their list? Because they know that it is a vote loser.
Today, Erickson had some comments about online campaigning, influencers and the use of social media. I thought they were very, very interesting. I have to say I agreed with most of what he said. Let's have a listen.
We paid close attention to what had happened online during the referendum and did quite a bit of work following it to understand how the No Camp had organised their digital campaigning. The media landscape has changed. That's clear, and the pace of change is accelerating. There's traditional legacy media institutions, there's new and emerging forms of media, then there's individuals who are out there on different platforms as content creators. We took the view that we needed to engage with all comers.
Now, Nick, he claimed that the coalition misread the Voice result. I don't agree. I think they failed to capitalise on the result. That's a different thing. But I do think Labor played a very, very canny game. And look, it's a grown-up campaigner that goes back and wants to know where they go wrong. Too often you sort of blame somebody else, as the Liberal Party and the National Party seem to be doing right now. It's everybody else's fault. But you only ever pick yourself up and win if you learn exactly why, and be honest, why you went down the path you went down. And of course, he learned from all of those mistakes, and it's very, very clear that put them into the game this time. And the Libs, unfortunately, I don't think they were strong enough in the online space.
Yeah, I thought Paul Erickson made maybe 5 good points in his whole address, and that was one of them. You have to be everywhere. You don't turn down any opportunity to be on any platform nowadays, and here's why, Peter. I mean, 20 years ago, if I got the train into Sydney, you know, almost everybody on that train probably would have had one of 4 newspapers in their hand, probably one of 2 or 3. And so you kind of know what the agenda is. Now they're all looking at their phones. Now, what are they looking at? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, a lot of them will be reading your column tomorrow, I dare say. But what else are they watching on social media, on, you know, influencers, whatever? The only way to campaign now is to be on every platform all the time, the most you can, just be out everywhere. And I think Albanese did that very well. I don't think that we've learned that lesson yet. That's just one of the campaigning lessons we have to learn.
Now, this is a column I never miss. Phil Curry at the Australian Financial Review. He had a shrewd observation today. Have a listen.
10 or so years ago, a 34 and a bit primary vote would have been considered a failure by Labor. It's now handed you nearly 2/3 of the parliament, and preference is obviously now much more important than they once were. Can you sort of comment on that sort of new reality? And are these massive margins, like you've won this election, more volatile than perhaps they would have once been when you had a primary vote with a 4 in front of it?
And Dan, I'll make the point, Albanese's got a 93-seat majority off the back of a primary vote in this election that is lower than the election when Bill Shorten lost to Malcolm Turnbull in 2016. And I made the point all the way through the campaign in all of the published polling that preferences will be key, and the way in which they were running preference flows in some of those polls were way off the mark. The Libs appear to me, and you've just come out of a campaign as a candidate, the Libs appear to me to be flat-footed on preferences. And we also know that the left have got this whole program now, the Teals and legalised cannabis and, all of them, in harvesting preferences and funneling them back to Labor in a very disciplined way. We're like primary school kids and they're like university kids. We are so far out of the game.
Well, that's right, Peter. And I think, there's no point in securing a preference deal if the how to vote cards aren't getting to the hands of the voters. So you need to actually look at the practical, on the ground strategies to make sure that people are voting, following the preference flows. I think there's a bigger point here as well, Peter, which is I think that the era of big box political parties is now over. Even just 10 years ago, the Liberal Party could be the broad church that John Howard so masterfully was able to achieve through his, he first initiated it with his leadership and his capacity and his wisdom. And that lasted a very long time where, the Liberal Party could comfortably hold inner city seats like Kooyong and hold outer suburban seats. That is no longer the case because our society has changed so much, even in just 10 years, where the inner cities and those who vote teal have such a different lived experience to those in the outer suburbs. There's a massive wealth disparity. There's a very big educational difference. There's a big demographic difference. So I don't think that these two cohorts of voters can be housed within the same political party anymore. And what that means is the Liberal Party has to make a choice. Are they going to be a party of the inner cities or are they going to be a party of the outer suburbs? Now, I accept that there are exceptions to this. Goldstein is an example that deserves to be studied and considered. But by and large, the Liberal Party will have to make that choice. And that is something that they'll have to realise over the next year or two.
Yeah, there'll be convulsions, as I say, for a long time here. Leave it there, gents. Thank you.